Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Rise and Grind. Today, we're going to talk about why is it that we don't read? That's right. Why don't we read? Interesting facts, figures, and thoughts about reading. Many people think that reading is also just listening, but what are we losing along the way in translation? We're going to talk about it here in just a moment. Be right back. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Rise and Grind. I'm 72 the Architect, aka Jason B. And today we're going to talk about and something that many of us in America can do and some can't. It's reading. But as we become adults, are we reading less and just listening and watching? I think there's something to it. And it's interesting about how this all works and why are we getting dumb? That's my question. Are we getting dumb? So today on Rise and Grind, what we're going to look at is, hey, we're discussing the art of reading. And reading is it's an invaluable skill that has the power to open up our worlds of knowledge and understanding. But are we listening and reading less? Through my years of reading, I have found that it's an incredible way to consume and project information from autobiographies, self help books, instruction manuals, fictional tales. Reading has opened my eyes as a world of possibilities. But not only does it provide entertainment, but also gives me the tools and information to understand and navigate life. It gives me the possibilities of going from informed to imagined, to be able to be a trendsetter or maybe even a thoughtful person. Perhaps even reading gives me the internal creative messages. And that's exactly what we're going to be going over. So, can you remember your first book? Do you remember in school? What was the first book that you actually read? Can you remember? Did you ever remember the first book that actually had a big sense of meaning? You went along the journey, you found a treasure inside the message or the struggle. Well, I can remember the first book that really resonates with me, and that was Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. I was about in sophomore in high school. I had already read books, but most of the time, books didn't really mean anything to me. They just kind of sat there and sat idle in a position that I really just didn't care about but one day I was in Mr. Or Dr. Hatch's room, and it was this English 1B, and he was talking about literature, and I was being a class clown in the back of the class. I was not an A student. I was not a good student at that point. There were some problems, emotional issues, home stuff, all kinds of things. But somehow this small book, I remember it was real small, like like maybe 200 pages long, maybe. Somehow this story caught my attention. And when I was listening to Of Mice and Men, um, it was interesting because I began to transform my thoughts. I got interested in Lenny, a character that, let's just say, the guy, he wasn't the smartest Crayola in the Crayola box. Maybe he was neurodiverse. I'm not going to say he was retarded, but however, there were things that really caught my attention about what he was doing. Why was it so important, for this guy, um, to be so important? I felt his misunderstanding. I felt his dilemmas, not being so smart and being childlike. But, along the way, my mind transformed myself into the world of the 1920s and 30s and the era of Great Depression, where men roamed across the land to try to find work from farm to farm and getting involved with sharecropping and so on and so forth. But when the story took a tragedy end where um, Lenny was killed because he got basically cornered by a young girl and he wanted to shut her up and he choked her to death or broke her neck or whatever. His companion who was always watching out for him had to shoot him, and it upset me. And I was like, it was my first sense of deeper meaning. It was my first time that I ever really understood that I could go inside a world of myself. I could imagine myself being there on the farm, seeing these men work the fields, seeing the evil villains, the non-players, so to speak. But now we warp speed it to today. We have apps, we have things that constantly project us right now. We have imagination done for us. We have videos and we have audiobooks. And I've seen it, come far and above. And to some people, some of these books that would have just been on page now come to their ears. But there is a trade-off. Listening, many times people are listening and doing something else. They hear parts of the conversation, parts of the story, and however they translate it, it's interesting to see what the meaning they draw from it. Sometimes it's a story that you got to overlook. And when I think about these things, I think about how does this transform our world of understanding? Yesterday, I happened to listen to Joe Biden speak in amongst a crowd of Poland, and I watched him literally lying, saying where Americans are flying Ukrainian flags in support. But that wasn't true. I have never seen any Ukrainian flags in my neighborhoods or my part of the world. And I live in Stockton, California, one of the most liberal states and more understanding states, I would say. But we do get a bad rap. But I heard this man speak and say and project things. And yet, when I read things, I clarify how was I armed to spot his BS? Not just because of what I saw out in yards, but also what I understood about policy, how he was trying to flavor up. And, people are upset about certain things. We're facing a pretty hard economy, and we can't ignore that. But that's just politics. Now, how am I prepared for politics? I've read stories and books, things and tales, and heard things, which created curiosity to investigate. And when I look at these investigations, when I look at all these things, I look at my possibilities. You know, it's not that, knowledge is power. It's the it's the interpretation of knowledge to power. How you use and strategize, how you make things work. Many times we overlook a lot of things. You ever come across, let's even take reading just even a step back. Let's say you bought something from IKEA. I can remember when I bought my daughter's crib from IKEA. Beautiful, classic design. But when I looked at the instructions, they were so small and directed almost like it was written for the Dutch people. Well, guess what? IKEA is a Dutch company. And the picture didn't always make sense, but I had to try to make sense. Now, had it been not for me working with some levels of mechanics, putting things together before, knowing how to use tools and leverages, I'm sure that crib would have fallen apart if I would have put my daughter at the time when she was little in that crib. Now, of course, my daughter didn't sleep in the crib, but that's a different story. We buy these things. And that's another interpretation about reading. So let's go over some of the benefits according to a website called bosmo.app.benefits of reading books. I'm on YouTube right now. So I'm going to share this on my screen. So let's see if I can do this real quick. Excuse me. All right. Benefits of reading. Let's see if I can. There we go. So, number one, reading helps your vocabulary. I think that's a very, very indication about how good levels of people speaking is a lot of times on their vocabulary and where do they get it from. I do believe, according to this article, it says, according to researchers, children who regularly read books at an early age develop large vocabularies in the long run. When the child has the benefits of vocabulary, the effect on their academic success by passing different set tests, eventually getting college admissions and having vast job opportunities. Well, who doesn't want a better opportunity to make more money? Now, number two, reading improves communication and conversational skills. Going back to number one, reading gives gives you a lot to think about. Hence, you will continually have your mind wander, and explore difference in issues and stories. That means reading can help you become a better speaker. Having a good imagination and quality of vocabulary gives you an upper hand. Now, just a pause from that reading. Now, just think about this. There's a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's about a book about behavior, how we can interpret a situation. Now, there are many books about how to behave better and how to get to your results, but if you really think about it, there's books like that will literally give you the game plan of how to control your attitude and your ego. And think about it. Have you ever said something that you wish you hadn't said? Maybe it's because you trained and read and you prepared. Number three, now, this is something that I really think is very important. Reading reduces stress. That's right, it does. Why does it reduce stress? Now, before I read the summary of what this category says, reading is slowed down in a world of your mind. And I think this is very, very important for many reasons, because when we look at how we're interpreting something, reading in pace, it's slow. Your mind is consuming slowly and not just click right or left, or is this going to hit my attention in 30 seconds or less? We are a lot of times switching to that world. I forget where I read it, but it said that the average American household has an attention span of 5 seconds or less on any given subject. Are you hitting points or explanations? And how are we prepared in any conversation? A lot of times it's hearsay and I heard or I watched something on TV, but the lack of follow up leaves us wide open for interpretation and problems. That's right, problems. So when we take also reading, it gives us the level of understanding. So let's look at number three and go on to what I was saying. Reading reduces stress. Whether it's a novel or article, a great story will distract you from a daily tasks and issues. When you have your hands on well-written novel, it will transport you into another realm. While engaging an article will keep you focused on the present, the tension you have is automatically drained away, allowing your entire body to relax. Now, I feel instead of watching TV at night to fall asleep, I think that's very true. If you read more books at night, before bed, your mind just wears out and wants to shut off. It does me. But I try not to read things that will activate it or begin controversy. So keep that in mind. Number four, reading helps relieve depression. Now, according to Scruton, a British philosopher said that the idea that one can escape from reality is not just imaginary conciliation. Depressed people always feel isolated and alienated from others. Reading books and articles can help minimize these feelings. I believe that's also true. But reading books can help escape your world and experience the fictional adventures of characters. At the same time, reading self help books can allow patients with depression to be better and understand themselves and their symptoms. I also can attest to that. Number five, healthy reading habits means healthier bodies. All readers will tell you that being immersed in a great book can stimulate the brain's various functions. Different researchers have proven that this continues to support the different health benefits accrued during or from reading. Reading also decreases heart rate and blood pressure, relieves muscle tension, to the top fact that it reduces stress. So reading is not just beneficial activity for our mental health. It actually goes beyond that. Also relieve that physical symptoms of the mental ailments it cures. Now, these are just some of this article. And I found it, if you want to go ahead and read the rest of what's in the article, click onto my YouTube and I'll have the descriptions in the notes later today when I go and edit some of this. So let's bring the image right back to me. All right, and here we are. So if we think about what's taking place in reading, I will tell you that when you begin to read and you commit to a study, that's different. One of the things I can't tell people just to read a book. I'm going to give you highlights of what a book gave me, and hopefully I can entice you to go on that journey of self-discovery, or even in a fictional tale. Like when you read, what is it, Dorian Gray, Why was it so important to read a tale like that? Well, just to give you the highlights, Dorian Gray is really to show us about the vanity and how it escapes us and eludes us from our present, and how it can be our own inner demon coming out. And it's an interesting tale to talk about. But there are a few others that I commit to study. Like, for example, the Daily Stoic, right? This thing I've owned for 2 years, every single day, pretty much, or most days. I have literally read this book, The Daily Stoic, 366 Meditations on Wisdom, Perseverance, and the Art of Living by Ryan Holiday and Stephen Hanselman. I have read a page every day in the same pages for 2 years straight. And the interesting thing about my readings, as you can see on YouTube, you can see where I wrote a question at the bottom, and then you see two different highlights, one pink, one yellow, and they were points of reference. I learned that when I commit to a book of study such like this, it expands my horizon, expands my ideas, and creates a valued memory. People ask me, how do you interpret such wisdoms and things like that? How do you do all this? And I say, because I commit to the study and practice. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest heroes in my mind and great Stoics, who wrote meditations. He basically wrote meditations as his own journal, his own memoirs to remind himself of how to keep. Let's see. There we go. Alarm came on. But he wrote his meditations as reference to things and problems he came across. And now here it is, 1,000+ years later, that we are able to interpret his wisdoms, even from those dark times, into modern interpretations. You know, we also have, cognitive books, help, like it said, self-help books. There's two that I'm really reading right now. And like right now, I've been enjoying the author of the 5 a.m. Club, Robin Sharma. And I found out about this from a friend and colleague, Barbara Majeski. And let's see, here we go. Let me move my fingers out. The Everyday Hero Manifesto. And I started listening to it, and excuse me, he had a lot of things to interpret in a lot of his points in my listening. I was like, I've got to own the written copy. I don't want to just listen. I want to be able to write these references so I can sharpen the tools of my interpretation of my situation. But let's get really down to the question, why is it that we don't read? I believe it's we don't want to navigate our attention to do hard work. That's right. We want to be continually selective of our interpretations and our situations. You can't ignore it. It really is something that we deal with on an everyday basis. We have a load of information. It's a barrage every day. What's on TikTok? What's on the news? What's on Instagram? More people are selling parts of their souls of attention just to be informed or partially informed. We go on arguments, and we get into debates that half-wittedly, we don't really know what we're talking about. But the one equalizer to lead you down to being informed and being prepared for any situation is the level of your comprehension, the level of your reading. And like the article said, reading more often sharpens your mind, because believe it or not, as you get older, your mind starts to decline. As we get older, our memories just kind of start fading away. It's a fact. But if we're constantly reading, we're exercising the mental muscle. That's right, the mental muscle. If you don't do it, you lose it. How many times have you suggested, I should read that book, I should do these things? But they're more just thoughts and shoulds. They're never interpretations for benefits. There are also fictional tales that leave great gems. That's right, great gems. One other book I'm reading is The Richest Man in Babylon, as you can see, by George S. Clason. And I have highlighted a lot of what's in this book. I'll even show you, like, chapter 8, the fourth cure, guard thy treasure from less. If you look inside my page, you see it highlighted, notes, points, you know, things of reference. The reason why I do this is because when I remember and I write down the next part of my talk, is when I write the reference points, I now know where it came from, when it came from. I know what to look for. This is someone else's man's thoughts, but it's interpretations into my life. I'm not always the most emotionally prepared, but I'm not the most emotionally unstable. Part of my stability in my mental health training is my reading and study, and also writing. That's right. People, you gotta be writers too. It's more people are now starting to journal their story. I have 3 of these different books that I write my story, my visions, my goals. I just don't want to be a guy with a blank slate and like a hope and a whim. That's really what it comes down to. So my writings and interpretation of study means that I'm now executing, doing. So that's really something to think about. When we think about a lot of these things, when we think about all what's going on in our world, are you really informed about famine? Are you informed about inflation or recessions? As an example, here's a big key. Recessions are programmed by the wealthy. I'm not saying to go after wealthy people, but when wealthy people overstep their bounds, it's a trickle down effect. We're paying more at the gas pump, more in food. Eggs are almost sometimes $10 a dozen. Crazy, right? We got there. But did we understand the game going along the way? Have you actually been one of those people who preps year round when you want vegetables and fruits year round during strawberry season? Do you can or cut up strawberries to freeze throughout the year? Do you use different produces so when it's not in that growing season, you can use it? Well, in my household, one big part of my growing up is we learned the art of canning and freezing. We'd use these vacuum safe bags. We learned this by reading. It's a practice in our daily life. We're not buying at the grocery store, spending $7 on a small basket of strawberries. Nope, we have them frozen. Now, yeah, it's great to have fresh, but at what cost? The cost to your pocket? Are you saving more and spending less? It's really something that reading can lead you down. But I think why is it that we don't read that question alone? It's the work. A lot of us say we got to do work. A lot of us say that we got to do things for the better. But there's only so much you can say, and just gets down to let's get down and dirty. You know that song I'm sure you've heard in TikTok and Instagram, let's get down to business. When I hear that, it's like, hey, get to work, Jason. That's what it says to me. And when I look at all these beautiful things, I look at the capacity of what I can do. I read, I study, I execute, I do. And sometimes I have to read something 20 times, 10 times, and I go and do. There's only so much reading can do. Sometimes you just got to be about the action as well. Well, actually, a lot of times you got to be more about the action, but or you don't know where to start. You start somewhere and you start finding out. I think we've gotten to a point in our generations where people are just not searching for the answers other than Google or AI. So I think that the tragedy is why is it that we don't read is based on a couple of things. The convenience, number one. Two, the work that it takes. Three, the pace that we feel that we're going to be missing out. Anyhow, that's really the sum of the show. And I wanted to come on here to encourage you to think more, to read more, to take more time out for yourself instead of spending 4 hours or 2 hours or 3 hours in a little phone saying, mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the smartest and bravest of them all? Well, of course, it's not you, stupid, but I'll give you the answer. Google that top 10 facts of how to make you freaking amazing, right? It's not by accident. So, if you have taken anything from this show, feel free to give me a comment. If you're listening to me on Wisdom or Twitter or even Facebook and YouTube, go onto my channel, leave me a comment and let me know what you thought. If this makes an impression and reminds you to do better for yourself and reading is a retraining ground for you, do it, please. Anyhow, that's all the time that I have for Rise and Grind. Thank you so much for coming out. We'll see you next time. I'll be on Saturday, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 a.m. Eastern, start to finish. We're going to talk about, starting your journeys and your projects and things, getting it going. And I'm also going to be talking about the fitness challenge that I'm a part of. So, yeah, thank you all so much. I hope you all have a great day.